the Audi e-tron. Audi's first fully electric car is also an SUV. We chose the e-tron because we wanted a car that wouldn't have a lot of problems and it would be reliable over time. I really wanted to love this car. I pre-ordered one 3 days before it was open to the general public. I followed it on Audi's reservation system, from locking the configuration of my car, to it being manufactured, to it leaving the factory and being loaded on a boat. I followed the boat, the Globus Condor, from Europe all the way through to the west coast of California, and I was working with the dealer for when the car would arrive at the dealership, and I went to pick it up in Northern California the next day, receiving one of the first Audis to come from Europe into California. There are many wonderful things in the Audi e-tron. It is a luxury experience for my daily commute of 80 miles, and I don't need to cover all of the things that other reviewers have covered really well. There are some unique things to the Edition 1 model that we received, including the volcanic ash trim, the wheels, and the night vision assistant, which I find technically quite cool. I really wanted to love this car, but there are many problems that grind on the driving experience, and they make me question why I chose Audi instead of a Tesla. Disconnecting the electric charger from the car is a problem. I first experienced this at the dealership when I picked up my car. I'd asked the dealer to charge my car before I left, and the salesperson couldn't figure out how to disconnect the charger from the car. I had to fumble with it for a while to try to figure out how to get it disconnected. Sometimes the door gets stuck when you unlock it. It's a pretty frustrating experience when you press the stop button in the car, you reach to open the door, and the door doesn't open. In some cases, I find that lock and unlock button don't work. In the e-tron, you press forward to go backwards. You press backward to go forwards. Confused? So am I. Let's say this again. You press forward to go backwards. You press backward to go forwards. I thought I would get used to this, and to some degree I have. But when I drive other cars, which you press forward to go forward and you press backward to go backward, when I get back into the e-tron, I make mistakes. It's really confusing, and I have no idea what the designer was thinking when they made this. Audi made a big deal out of the Electrify America charging network they are building. What they leave out is that this charging network is being built as penance or penalty for the diesel emission scandal that happened a couple years ago. As a result, they're not building chargers in areas that are convenient. They're building chargers in areas that are underserved. That means there's no chargers anywhere nearby in the San Francisco Bay Area that I can use. So there's no 150 kilowatt hour level 3 charger to charge my battery in less than an hour. Because I can't use Electrify America, it's not convenient in my area, we use ChargePoint. And it seems that Audi didn't do any work to pre-test or verify their car with ChargePoint. The first time I tried charging my car with ChargePoint, after about an hour of charging, I got a message from ChargePoint telling me that my car was done charging. And I actually had to go down to the garage to check and see that actually it was still charging and had about another 7 hours to go. So it seems like Audi didn't test this with that network. In fact, it seems like Audi didn't even talk to ChargePoint because ChargePoint didn't have the Audi e-tron listed as an electric car in their menu of cars that you can select for your profile. They have only the A3 e-tron listed. I had to file a support request to get that fixed, and it took about 4 months before ChargePoint fixed it. But I wonder, why am I filing that support request on Audi's behalf? Isn't that something Audi should have done? e-tron has this really cool luxury feature where when you sit down in the car, it sort of glides you into position. The seat like glides you right up to the steering wheel. However, several times when it's doing this, it actually stops and slides all the way back out and doesn't complete the task. And you have to press the memory button to force the seat to get back into position. And so I find this pretty frustrating, this false positive that doesn't allow us to actually get the seat into the right position. And so I had to disable the feature. On 2 occasions in the city and 1 occasion on the highway, the car has warned me that there's no key in the car. And I don't know what the car's going to do when it thinks there's no key in the car. I don't know if it's going to suddenly stop in the middle of driving or something bad, but the key's sitting in my pocket. And that false positive is really kind of a scary experience. You don't know when you're driving down the highway at 70 miles an hour if the car's suddenly going to stop because it can't find the key after a certain period of time. I don't know if that's because the antenna design in the key is bad or the receiver in the car is bad, but that's kind of a bad experience for a luxury vehicle. We can't talk about problems without talking about the recall. Audi had to recall many of the first eTrons because there was a bad seal in the charging compartment that would allow water to get into the battery. I think it was good responsibility of Audi to actually own up to the problem quickly and address it in the market. So I like that, and props to Audi for doing that. What I have a problem with is how they communicated the recall. I learned about the recall in the news several days before anyone from Audi had contacted me. I contacted my dealer to ask if my car was under recall, and my dealer looked it up online and said it wasn't. But then I learned through an online forum that there was a website that Audi had where you could enter your VIN number to see if the car was recalled, and it turns out my car was recalled. So I had to tell my dealer that my car was recalled, and they didn't know what to do. They had no answers for me. Eventually, some third-party company that Audi was paying had contacted me to tell me that I had a recall on my car and that there would be a fix in 6 to 8 weeks, which was great. Audi, one of their executives, sent me a letter that explained the recall, said, oh, we'll do a repair in 6 to 8 weeks. That's great. I also heard that they had the repair fixed on all the new cars they were building. Great. It's been 10 weeks. Nobody's contacted me at the time of filming this to say, hey, we need to fix your car. We've got it ready. Let's talk about driving efficiency. Perhaps it's telling that the user interface in the cluster that tells you the remaining range on your vehicle is red. The other UI indicators on menu items are in different colors, in yellow and green and blue, but the one that's reserved for remaining miles is always red. Based on actual usage and driven miles, our Audi e-tron gets about 2.3 miles per kilowatt hour. Compared to our BMW i3, which is like a Tesla Model 3, it's lower than the 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour we get from our BMW i3. BMW is about 60% better. I get that the Audi is a heavier car, but this is also in ideal conditions. This is in Northern California where we're getting a good temperature range of maybe 10 degrees Celsius to maybe 25 degrees Celsius and mostly highway driving. When we do city driving, it's a lot worse. So Audi falsely advertised that the battery on the e-tron is 95 kilowatt hours, when in fact it's more like 84 kilowatt hours. That's like saying you have a 16-gallon gas tank in your car, and if you drive it from full until empty, that you only consume 14 gallons of gas. I understand why Audi did this. They're likely limiting the minimum and the maximum voltage that can be used in the battery, and that translates to better battery longevity, and you can put the vehicle through more charge-discharge cycles. But when you apply the actual range of the car at 2.3 miles per kilowatt hour against that 84 kilowatt hour battery, you end up with closer to 193 miles of range, which is quite disappointing. Which leads me to one-pedal driving. One way to get better fuel efficiency is to actually allow the car to recoup the energy as it's decelerating and recharge the battery, and this is called regenerative braking. All electric cars support this. My BMW i3 allows us to do this with just driving with one pedal. And the way they do this is when you let your foot off the gas, they actually apply the motor to regenerate and pull energy from the vehicle as it's moving, and decelerating it as a side effect of that. Audi has chosen to actually try to make the e-tron as similar to a gas vehicle as possible so that someone who is a gas car driver could transition more easily to an electric vehicle and then feel more comfortable. However, that leaves a lot of us who are familiar with electric vehicles and like one pedal driving behind. There is a manual mode that you can set in the Audi where you can force manual regenerative braking, and that means that you can almost drive with one pedal. What you need to do is you need to set it to manual regeneration in the user interface menu, and then you have to pull on the paddles on the steering wheel to force 2 levels of regenerative braking. But the bad part is that it's only 50% of the regenerative braking possible. From the gas pedal alone, it doesn't get you to the full regenerative braking without pressing the brake. And the time it takes to move your foot from the gas pedal to the brake pedal is long enough that it actually can make a difference in how much energy you're recuperating when you need to stop and go quickly, or you need to let your foot off the gas a little bit here and there. And it can add up over time. And so it would really help if Audi actually allowed us to get full regenerative braking in manual mode. I believe that's a software thing that Audi could change. The other thing that they need to change with that is they need to remember that setting across turning the car on and off. Today, every time I get into the car, I have to set the car back into 2 levels of regenerative braking, and I can kind of drive with one pedal, but not exactly. But if they actually allowed us to set it to full regeneration mode from the gas pedal, and we could actually see that every time we started the car so we didn't have to do it all the time, it would be for a much better experience for driving. I really wanted to love this car, but there are many issues with it. These are not the fit and finish issues that a Tesla has. These are more like software design and usability issues. It's my hope that in sharing this information that Audi can make improvements and changes to the vehicle for all of the existing e-tron customers and any future ones.